Hello, and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, counselor, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. We pray that you will be encouraged by this podcast. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Today, I have the honor of bringing you a dear friend and fellow line of duty widow, Gracie Parrish Miller. Gracie lost her husband, Zach, on January 31st of 2017, 5 weeks before my husband was killed, and Zach was killed only an hour north of us. And so Gracie and I have become friends through trauma, and we have shared a very unusual experience of line of duty loss, and we have walked through some of the healing process together. Gracie has 2 girls and now 2 bonus children and is remarried. Today, Gracie and I are going to talk about what we wish we had known when we first became first responder spouses. So Gracie, thank you so much for coming on the Hopecast today and sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to, 1, get to hang out with you and chat, but 2, to be able to just kind of reflect back on what we would do differently, what we wish we would have known. And as I find myself as a fire wife, I'm kind of back in the fire. And so this is even good for me to be kind of reflecting on my first experience of being a first responder wife and now my second.
Yeah, that I will admit that I feel a sense of a combo of intimidation and bravery that you chose to step back into the first responder life after paying the ultimate price, and you entered into that realm again.
Yes, I swore that I would never be a first responder wife again, that I would never marry a first responder. Within probably the first week after Zach died, I had someone who I dearly love was, those honest questions. I was 29 years old and a widow of like, do you think you'd ever remarry again? And at first, I know I can't imagine remarrying. Like, I'm burying my husband of 8.5 years. I've got 2 babies, one still in a crib. Like, I cannot imagine remarrying. But deep in my heart, I knew that was something that was going to be in my future. I love marriage. I love the union. I love doing life with someone. So I knew that I wouldn't be like a widow, single woman, widow forever. That's not what my heart longed for. But gosh, I prayed that God would not make me a first responder wife again. It was hard. And I felt like I had kind of earned the PhD that none of us want to earn.
The pain cred.
We don't want to have that. And gosh, it sucks so bad. It's like, what percentage are we? But here we are. And line of duty death, murder. And I didn't want back into it. And it wasn't, I'll be honest, it was not because of fear of losing another first responder husband to a line of duty death. My desire to not want to marry a first responder again is because I know the challenges that come with being a first responder family, just in the mental health and in the marriage. And that was enough to scare me to go, I don't know if I want to do this again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just for people who are not familiar with your story or our stories, would you just give us a little overview of Zach's transition into law enforcement and then how he lost his life?
Yeah. So Zach and I, we met at 18 years old in college. It was kind of like lightning, just hot and heavy, lots of passion and excitement. Married young, ring by spring. I was married at 21 years old. We had our eyes on this beautiful life that we wanted to have together. And I dreamed of a white picket fence, 2.5 kids, a dog. Mm-hmm. And he was planning on going into the corporate world, suit, tie, 9 to 5. And I thought, this is perfect. This is my dream come true. I'll get to be a mom and I'll have my husband home on the weekends and holidays. First responder world was never something that came up in our conversation. That's not a part of our families. We were not raised around it, so we really didn't know anything about it. Zach graduated college. He got a job at a bank, and he started just kind of working that corporate life. Several years later, I was 8 weeks pregnant with our firstborn, and Zach comes home and says, I want to go into law enforcement. I want to be a police officer. And it was not up for discussion. It was happening. This is something that he had shared. Like, I've been thinking about this. I really want to do it. It's almost as if me getting pregnant was this, like, I don't know, midlife crisis for him in some ways of like, I can't be at a desk all day. And as soon as I have a kid, I've got to become a provider for a family. And so if there's any time for me to jump, it's going to be now. And so I found myself, we had that white picket fence, our first house, but I have this growing belly, and he's putting himself through the academy on top of working a 40-hour-a-week job. And I was resistant to the first responder life. I did not want it. It was scary to me, not because of the guns or the perceived like violence or threat. It was just different. And I wanted that corporate 9 to 5, like safe, secure job. And
stable, consistent.
Yeah, easy bonus every year. Like, I wanted it just safe. And that is a lot of my personality. I like things that feel safe and controlled, stable, lists, black and white. And God, in many ways, he knew what he was doing and challenging me to step outside of that. And so there was no changing Zach's mind. He was going to go into law enforcement. I just needed to get on board. He did. He put himself through the academy. He got a job at a police department about 30 minutes away from us. And that's where he worked for about 2 years. And then it would be after he had kind of explored the avenues of being a police department, fell in love with the job. I mean, he went from wearing a suit and tie to everything was tactical with a patch and tattoos.
So
and he loved it. Like, he was living and breathing this cop life. It was consuming in many ways. And he was good at it. He was really good at his job. And I saw him walking in his passion. And that was really cool to see him loving what he did. And then he would decide that he would want to just kind of have a bigger swimming pool, a bigger fishbowl for himself. So that's where he applied for the local sheriff's office. And that was going to be a move great for his career, but it was also going to be better for our family life. He'd be able to be home right when shift ended, take home car, just be able to attend the kids' soccer games and such when he was going to be around versus his district that he would be in was 30 minutes away. So it was going to be a lot better for us. And he would get that job in June of 2017 at the local sheriff's office.
Okay.
And then it would only be a handful of months later that on December 31st, 2017, he would be ambushed in the line of duty. And I would wake up to a knock pounding on my front door at 7:55 a.m. With uniformed officers informing me that I was now a widow. I was 29 years old. We had two baby girls at this time. Caroline was 4. She had just turned 4. And then Everly was 16 months old. So I had 2 kids, one that was verbal. Caroline was verbal, but Everly was nonverbal at the time. But both would experience kind of their world shattering. I did not realize how public Zach's death would become. How it would become nationwide news. That we would have, the president tweeted to us that this was like this young family that lived in this, what was supposed to be like a Bedford community. And that was shattered when gunfire would take the life of my husband at only 29 years old. So I soon found myself on this new journey of going from a very quiet life of making, my specialty was making macaroni and cheese and taking my youngest to preschool and planning play dates. Like, I was the queen mom. I laundry, making those Easter baskets, planning out how I would dress my 2 girls identical. Like I loved my life. I loved just being at home with them and taking care of them. That was my dream. I left my job in corporate to stay at home, and I didn't want anything different, but I didn't anticipate, nor did I choose to become a name that was known within the community, and
Mm-hmm.
where people didn't just know my name or my daughter's names, but they knew my husband's name and how he was killed. They knew the killer's name. They knew how many times he had been shot. There was a lot of information that suddenly my worst day became, I don't know, how would you say it, Rachel? It became everyone's.
I mourned the worst day of my life in front of the whole world is how it felt.
Yes.
Like
Yep.
you
And
go
you don't
through
have a
the
choice.
darkest place. You don't have a choice. You're set into motion in this machine that is line of duty death. And everyone is watching
Mm-hmm.
as you try to just breathe through the explosion of your life.
Yep. The life we knew was obliterated. It wasn't just big pieces that we could somehow glue back together and make it look somewhat similar to the life we had before. This life was now complete dust, and there was no rebuilding to make it look like what it did before. We were living a completely new life.
Mm. One of the things you and I talked about was the effect that law enforcement had on our husbands' hearts and souls, and just seeing what it looked like for them to wall off their hearts just to survive the job that is law enforcement. So talk a little bit about what that was like with Zach.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that cop wives don't know how to talk about, and we don't know how to talk about it in light of our husband's best interest, because they protect our community and we want to protect them. And I don't, so we never want to enter into a conversation with fellow cop wives and talk about our concerns for our husbands, like emotional and mental health, because we don't want to put them in a position where they look weak, because they always
Right.
need to appear strong. And so I think that looking back, I I wish that there had been an opportunity for me to share just my heart or my concerns in a really safe spot. Um, I saw law enforcement change Zach, and that scared me, because I had been married to him for about 6.5 years when he got his job as a police officer. And
Mhm.
of course, you're young and you're married, and everyone's going to change. Everyone's going to, grow old together. And so that means meshing and blending as you change in your desires and wishes. But I saw something change in Zach. Like I saw his optimism for humanity
Mhm.
change. And I think that I wish I had been more prepared for how to handle that as a wife. I wish that him and I had had better communication, better tools for how to talk about that with one another, because we didn't.
I came to realize because I met Micah 2 days before he started the academy, and he started so hopeful and he wanted to be in law enforcement because he wanted to protect victims and bring justice and serve the hurting, and that was where he started, and he very much transitioned into what you're talking about, where it was like, where is the goodness of God in the face of this pain, right? I'm walking into people's most painful
Mhm.
days every single day. And he really wrestled with that, and it shifted that sense of hope for goodness in people, and assuming that people were, had negative intent, were out to get him. I mean, we couldn't go to a restaurant without him sitting with his back against the wall, watching people's hands, just that hypervigilance that comes with having to be aware of that. And
Mhm.
I didn't know, like I saw the shift, probably within 18 months he had built a pretty solid wall around his heart, and I came to say to him, I feel like I get to be with the man that I married 2 weeks a year, because he had 4 weeks of vacation a year, and it would take him about 3 weeks to come down, he would become himself of being relaxed and having fun and able to just enjoy the people around him. And then about 3 days before he had to get back on shift, I would see him start to wall his heart off again. And there were times when I really grieved, like
Mm-hmm.
I only get the real Micah 2 weeks out of the year because of what it costs to serve the public on their worst day every day.
Yeah. What would you, I'm just thinking like we've loved and we've lost. We've watched, we're now like looking at it in the rear view mirror of our lives.
Mm,
And I'm trying to just reflect, or even not that I can problem solve or I can fix it, but like what would I do different? How could I change it? How could I fix it? If I could go back in time, was there
mm,
anything that I could have done different to help my marriage with Zach, to help him? Like, obviously, I can't make choices for him to
mhm.
communicate with me, or to do different things. But I just wonder, have you ever thought about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that death was the gift of the 30,000-foot view. I pulled back and I said, what did my marriage really look like? Where were the problems that were mine and where were the ones that were his? How could I have um, loved him more effectively, served him more effectively, knowing what I know now? There were parts of Micah that I didn't know until after he died because they were shared with me by his coworkers,
Mm,
right? This is the Micah that I knew. This is the Micah who
yes.
served. This is the Micah
Yes.
who was passionate. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
I so wish that I had heard these things about him before he died. And that's just
Yeah.
a note for anyone to say, when you see something good in someone, don't wait for their eulogy. Tell them now, right? The time is now to affirm them. Don't worry about being
Yeah.
vulnerable or looking silly. Tell people when you see strengths in them, because Micah had insecurities like
Yeah.
everyone, and he didn't know that these people honored him at this level when he was alive. And so, but
Mhm.
I think the thing is I came in like the general public, where we have this thing about blue lives, right? And people want to say, oh, well, they're not blue lives because you choose to become a law enforcement officer. But what the public doesn't realize is there is an adaptation of the person that chooses to serve in this way that does affect them body, soul, and spirit. And I had no idea what that looked like. And I just thought I was signing on for any other job that was going to pay the bills and that was
Mhm.
salaried. Like when we got together, I was like, oh, you want to be a cop? That's cool. Okay. I had no idea what I was signing up for.
Yep.
And so I wish that I had known some of his struggles earlier. He took me on a ride along in like year 8. And then he took me on a tour of the jail. And I wish that we'd done that in like year 1 or year 2, because the empathy that it gave
Mhm.
me for his daily life and, the reality that, especially in our county, our staffing numbers are so low that backup was 30 minutes away. Like when he's out in Calhan, if he is under threat, no one is there to help him for 30 minutes. And that reality of him living in that tension and continuing to serve, knowing that, gave me so much grace and compassion for him, of just the stress that he felt.
Mhm.
And I wish that I'd had that so much earlier.
Yep. Yep. I would agree with that. I would agree with everything that you said.
What about you?
I never, so I never went on a ride along with Zach. I wish I would have, and I wish I would have done it. The policy for the agencies that he was working with was that I could not go on a ride along with him in his vehicle.
But you could have gone with one of his coworkers.
Yep, I could have. And I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have gone with him, or not with him, but I wish I would have just done a ride along, even if it, I'll be honest, I don't know if I was even allowed to go on his shift. Regardless, I wish I would have just gone. I wish I would have done a ride along with his agency to truly understand what he does, what he did for work. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have entered into his world. I was so,
Mm,
like I grew up in a home and in a world where your job was your job, but it wasn't a way of life. It
right.
wasn't your identity. It wasn't
That's
something that
normal.
you brought home. Like, like it was left in the vehicle, and maybe there was stress coming home from a hard day at work, or there was a presentation or a big meeting that was coming up that required more preparation, but it didn't impact how we sat at a restaurant. It didn't impact our daily life out at grocery stores. I mean, Zach and I had a code word so that if he saw someone that he had arrested that he didn't want to see me, then I knew to take the kids and just walk away. No questions asked. Like,
Right.
I just would walk. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that I was so resistant, but also just not being aware that this isn't just a job for him, but it's a way of life, and it's a part of what makes him who he is. And so I think that was something that I wish I would have had more compassion and understanding for. And I wish that I would have truly embraced that if he was called to be a police officer, then I was called to be a cop wife.
Mm-hmm. I had no idea the family serves. I had no idea.
Mm-mm. And I didn't really I wanted it to just be like, that's your job. That's how you bring home money to provide for our family.
Mm-hmm.
But don't let it change you. Don't
Yeah.
let it change our family. Don't let it take away from our family. And so when I kind of went into it completely blind, I mean, I was corporate and then suddenly I'm now law enforcement. It felt like it just took and stole from my family all the time.
I would
It
agree.
stole my husband. It stole his heart, his emotions, his time. It stole his sleep. It
Mm.
stole anniversaries and holidays and family gatherings. It stole the ability for him to be at Caroline's first dance recital. It stole dinners and weekends, and it just felt like it stole. And then I started to just become really frustrated and angry
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like he was giving so much to the community, but in turn,
Mm-hmm.
it was taking from my family.
Yeah. And it was. And you and I talked about this, and you said you wish that you had had the perspective. If you could tell your younger self this, you would have supported Zach differently emotionally and in those times when he had to miss dinners and be gone for Christmas Day. And you wish that you had had a different heart posture. What was that like?
Mm-hmm. I do. I really wish that, I mean, there's nothing like standing over a grave and I don't know, you watch your marriage and it's like it replays before your eyes, but suddenly you see it in a different light. And
Mm-hmm.
I wish that I would have had that perspective. I honestly wish I could give that perspective to every cop wife, every first
Mm-hmm.
responder wife. I don't think that what we're talking about is specifically to cops. I think it can speak to fire wives too.
Yeah, all first responders.
Yeah, I wish I could give them that perspective of what it's like to stand over a grave and know that, like, I didn't know that that was going to be my last goodbye. And I didn't know it would be my last Christmas with him. And I
Mm-hmm.
wish that I could go back and I could do things different. Of course, in the practical sense, I wish I could do things different. I would have picked less battles. I would have picked different battles.
Choose
Um,
the relationship over being right.
yeah.
That has been a mantra for me. Like I picked so many battles that I would walk away from now because our relationship and our love was far more valuable than what everything that we were arguing about.
Mm, that's really good. I think that I would pick less battles. I would have picked different battles. I would have appreciated the things that maybe annoyed me. Gosh, like hearing that Kevlar being like ripped off in the middle of the night or packing that like
Mm,
lunch. It's dinner leftovers, but it's going to be his lunch at 3 in the
mm,
morning. I didn't realize how precious it was to sleep next to your husband until it was gone because he worked
mm-mm.
graveyards all the time. But in many ways, in regards to like our marriage and his heart, I wish I would have pursued him and his heart in a different way. And I wish that
Mm.
I would have been more of an advocate for our marriage than just kind of wanting him to do all of it, and being feeling helpless. Like I wish I could go back and I could be
Yeah,
like, girl, like I need you to stand up. I need you to stand up and fight for your marriage and fight for him because he saw the darkness of our county and of the world every night when he went to work. And in many ways, I felt like I was fighting that darkness every time he came home
yeah,
from work. It's like he was bringing that darkness with him.
yeah.
And there's things that I wish that I would have done. My biggest thing that I wish I would have done is I wish I would have pursued marriage counseling for us. In a heartbeat, first thing, that's what I wish I would have done.
Gracie, this is so good. I want to continue this with you in a second episode and pick up on some of these things that we want to share with other first responder families and wives. Would you join me again for another episode of the Hopecast?
I'd love to.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Hopecast with Gracie Parrish Miller. And Gracie has an organization called the Shelter Foundation, and it is created to support first responder families and first responder marriages. And you can find that at theshelterfoundation.org. Everybody join me for next week's episode, part 2 of my interview with Gracie Parrish Miller. Thank you so much. If you would rate, review, and subscribe, you can push the message of hope to other people who need post-traumatic growth and resilience.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While there, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Also, another great way to stay informed with the Hopecast is to follow Rachael on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Just click on the social media icons at the top of the page and you'll be directed to Rachael's social media sites. While you're online, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.